Welcome to the deep dive. Usually when we think about medical diagnoses, we expect this kind of, engineering-like precision.
Right, yeah. Like a broken bone.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows a jagged white line,
Yeah.
and the doctor just points to the film and says, there it is.
The pathology is just undeniably visible. It's strictly binary, broken or whole.
But if you step into the realm of cognitive health and neurodevelopment, that diagnostic clarity just completely vanishes.
No, absolutely. It's a totally different world.
And if you've ever had to navigate the healthcare system for an aging parent, or even if you've simply started tracking your own cognitive longevity, you have probably experienced this murky diagnostic landscape firsthand.
Yeah, it is a field defined by biological ambiguity. The symptoms just overlap so much.
Which brings us to our mission today. We are unpacking a really fascinating research paper titled A Multidisciplinary AI Board for Multimodal Dementia Characterization and Risk Assessment.
It's a mouthful, but the core of it is incredible.
It really is. The source material details this groundbreaking new AI system called Cerebra. And we're going to look at how artificial intelligence in medicine is finally moving away from that traditional, opaque, quote-unquote black box model.
Right, those old systems that just spit out a single unexplained risk score and expect you to trust it.
Exactly. Instead, this new AI is acting like a virtual team of specialized medical agents that actively debate your specific case.
Which is a massive structural paradigm shift in how we apply machine learning to something as complex as human biology.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we dive into the actual mechanics of this virtual debate, I think we need to map the bottleneck. Why is catching something like dementia such a systemic challenge for neurologists right now?
Well, the challenge is really rooted in the messiness of the clinical data itself, coupled with just how insidious the disease is.
Right.
Because early cognitive complaints, they are incredibly common, but they're neurologically ambiguous. Like, say a patient reports memory lapses or brain fog.
It could be anything, right?
Exactly. It could be early-stage Alzheimer's, sure. But it could equally be chronic sleep apnea or a severe B12 deficiency or even just compounding medication interactions.
Meaning that general practitioners are just crushed under this impossible triage burden.
They're completely overwhelmed.
They have to look at this fragmented data and decide, okay, who gets a specialist referral? Who gets the really expensive PET scan? And who just gets told to maybe adjust their sleep schedule?
And that fragmentation you just mentioned, that is the core issue for machine learning here. We are talking about highly heterogeneous inputs.
Messy data.
Very messy. You have structured electronic health records, so that's your lab values, demographic data, diagnostic codes. But then you also have unstructured clinical notes.
Which is just the narrative descriptions typed out by the doctor, right?
Right, the crucial context. And on top of all that, you have complex medical imaging, like brain MRIs or optical coherence tomography.
Which is a lot for an algorithm to juggle.
It is. Current AI foundation models are actually remarkably brittle when they try to fuse all these different modalities together, especially when pieces of that data are missing, which, is basically a daily reality in any clinic.
So instead of actually synthesizing all that nuance, these older opaque models just kind of collapse everything down.
Yeah, they compress a lifetime of complex metabolic and neurological data into just one single number.
Like a lead detective taking over a massive fraud case, right?
Oh.
And they just run a statistical analysis on the suspect's bank statements, entirely ignore the witness depositions, ignore the surveillance footage, and they just slap a sticky note on your desk that says 92% guilty.
That is a perfect analogy.
And they just refuse to explain the mathematical weights behind that conclusion.
Which raises an important question. How can any responsible physician act on that sticky note?
They can't.
No, because the fundamental currency of medicine is evidence-based trust. If a doctor cannot interrogate the causal chain, like why did the algorithm flag this specific patient as high risk? If they can't see that, the tool is a liability.
It's not an asset at all.
Exactly. The black box approach strips away the critical thinking process. It leaves doctors completely blind to potential algorithmic hallucinations or biases in the training data. A doctor absolutely has to be able to trace the logic back to the biological evidence.
So if a single monolithic AI fails at the complexity of human health, the architecture itself has to change.
Right.
We need a system that can actually handle contradiction and messy evidence naturally. Which brings us to Cerebra, because the researchers didn't just build one massive parameter-heavy model, did they?
No, they didn't. They built a multi-agent orchestration framework. It essentially mirrors a real-world multidisciplinary medical board.
So it's not one AI, it's a team.
Exactly. It's a decentralized intelligence.
Okay.
The whole architecture relies on this orchestration of specialized experts. So it starts with the data agent.
Okay, what does that do?
It acts as the ingestion pipeline. Its main job is to just gather the available patient info, organize the inputs, and establish a timeline of the medical records.
Sort of like the administrative layer getting the files together.
Right. Then the super agent takes over. You can think of it as the chief of staff. It gets the main clinical objective, like assess the 3-year conversion risk to dementia, and it delegates very specific analytical tasks to the modality agents.
And these modality agents, they're strictly siloed specialists, right? There's an image agent, a node agent, and an EHR agent.
Yes, and they operate entirely independently during the first pass.
Okay.
So the image agent looks at the MRI and extracts concrete radiological findings. Maybe it quantifies ventricular enlargement or spots some subtle volume loss in the hippocampus.
While the others are doing their own thing.
Exactly. Simultaneously, the EHR agent is scanning the structured data, looking for long-term hypertension trends or gait abnormalities. And the node agent is using natural language processing to pull out qualitative stuff from the doctor's narrative.
Like a family member mentioning the patient is getting lost on their drive home.
Precisely. They gather their independent evidence, and then they bring it all to the summary agent. And this is where the paper introduces the propose and critique phase.
Okay, wait. I want to push back on this computationally for a second. Why do they actually debate?
What do you mean?
Well, why go through the expensive, token-heavy process of having these large language models simulate a literal semantic debate? Wouldn't it be vastly more efficient to just, mathematically average the risk scores from the three agents? I mean, math usually wins in these architectures.
What's fascinating here is that the researchers explicitly tested that exact assumption.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. They pitted this agentic debate against what they call heuristic fusion, which is basically what you just described, taking the minimum, maximum, or mathematical average of those independent risk scores.
Right.
This semantic debate systematically and decisively outperformed the heuristic math across all metrics.
Really? But averaging works perfectly well in most ensemble models. Why does it fail here?
Because averaging assumes that conflicting data points are just statistical noise that needs to be smoothed out. But in medicine, conflicting data often points to a complex underlying pathology. The modalities give you overlapping but strictly non-redundant views of a person's health.
Give me an example of that.
Sure. Consider a scenario where the EHR agent outputs a low risk because the patient's metabolic blood panels look pristine, but the image agent flags a high risk because it spots microhemorrhages on the brain scan.
Oh, I see. If you average a low risk and a high risk, you just get a medium risk.
Exactly, which is clinically useless, and mathematically it just dilutes that critical radiological finding.
Wow. Okay. So the debate forces the models to reconcile why there is a discrepancy, rather than just splitting the difference and losing the signal.
Right. During that propose and critique phase, the summary agent basically forces the modality agents to justify their findings to each other.
So they actually argue.
Yes. If the note agent found evidence of cognitive decline, the summary agent demands the EHR agent look for corresponding vascular issues in the chart. They iterate on this, challenging each other's evidence until they reach a grounded, logical consensus.
That is incredible. It completely reframes how we use LLMs in diagnostics. It's not about one massive model knowing everything. It's about specialized models challenging each other's blind spots.
Exactly.
But let's stress test this a bit, because all of this sounds brilliant when they have all the files. But think about a chaotic Tuesday at a community clinic.
Oh, it's incredibly messy.
Right. Patients skip appointments. Insurance denies the MRI scan. The referral notes are lost in some fax machine. Doesn't this beautiful multi-agent debate just fall apart if the specialists are missing half their files?
You would think so, but no. The system is engineered for what they call graceful degradation.
Graceful degradation.
Yeah, because the agents are modular, Cerebra doesn't just throw an error code or start hallucinating when a modality is missing. The data agent simply routes whatever information is available to the active agents.
Oh, wow. So it just works with what it has in the room.
Exactly. In their testing, even when the system was restricted to a single modality like, say, it only had access to unstructured clinical notes, it still maintained competitive baseline performance.
That's robust.
Very. And then as you introduce the EHR data and then the imaging, the predictive power just scales up proportionally.
And the way clinicians actually use this, it's not just a static PDF report, right?
Yeah.
It's an interactive dashboard.
Right, it's conversational. A doctor can query the summary agent directly and say, hey, show me the specific radiological evidence that led to this high-risk classification.
And it can actually point to it.
Yes, the system retrieves the exact bounding box on the MRI, or it highlights the specific sentence in the clinical note. It provides total provenance for every single claim.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, though. The dynamic medical notebook.
Oh, the experience module, yes.
Because if a doctor disagrees with the AI, they don't just ignore it. They can actually provide feedback.
Right. If a neurologist reviews the AI's evidence chain and spots a logical flaw or a clinical nuance the model missed, they just input a correction directly into the dashboard.
And the way this notebook updates the AI is brilliant. It isn't retraining the entire massive neural network from scratch every single time, which would cost, millions of dollars in compute.
No, it acts more like a dynamic memory bank.
It's basically like a medical resident learning from an attending physician, right?
That's a great way to look at it. Technically, it operates similarly to retrieval augmented generation, or RE.
Okay, so how does that work in practice?
The system stores these clinician corrections in the notebook. Then, when it evaluates a new similar patient later on, it queries that notebook, retrieves the prior human feedback, and injects it into the prompt context before the modality agents even start their debate.
So the attending doctor says, hey, you missed this vascular marker because you didn't check their smoking history. The AI resident writes that down, and the next time they see a similar case, they check the smoking history first.
Exactly. It continuously learns the local clinical pathways of the specific hospital it's operating in, and it prevents repeated errors.
And they proved this works, right? With an ablation study.
Yes, they did.
Just for anyone listening who might be unfamiliar, an ablation study is where engineers systematically turn off or remove specific components of an AI system just to prove whether that part is actually doing any useful work.
Yeah.
You ablate a feature to see if the whole thing breaks without it.
Right. So they turned off the dynamic medical notebook, and then they turned it back on, but they only fed it 6 distilled examples of human feedback. Just 6.
Wait, really? Just 6 corrections?
Just 6. And with only those 6, the model's predictive accuracy measurably increased right away. Its AUROC jumped from 0.746 to 0.760 instantaneously.
That is wild. It really acts as a clinical guardrail, proving that AI shouldn't replace doctors but evolve alongside them.
Absolutely. It's a localized adapting partner.
But, you know, an elegant architecture only matters if it actually catches the disease better in the real world. Let's look at the hard numbers. Because they didn't just train this on some perfectly sanitized academic data set.
Not at all. They deployed it across a massive data set of 3 million patients.
3 million.
Spanning 4 independent, highly diverse healthcare systems, NYU, Long Island, UF Health, and Indiana University. And they tested it against a realistic real-world disease prevalence of roughly 5%.
Which is key, because finding a 5% prevalence in 3 million people, that is the definition of finding a needle in a haystack.
It's incredibly difficult.
In that kind of unbalanced environment, an AI's false positive rate could easily just spiral out of control. It could start flagging everyone as sick just to be safe.
Which is exactly why their performance metrics are so compelling. Cerebra decisively crushed state-of-the-art single-modality models, and it beat leading LLMs like GPT-4o, GPT-5, and 𝗲𝗄 across the board.
Wow.
For 3-year dementia prediction, it achieved an AUROC of up to 0.80.
Let's unpack AUROC really quickly for the listener. It's the area under the receiver operating characteristic curve. It's essentially the gold standard metric in medical AI because it measures the model's ability to distinguish between classes.
Right, a 0.5 is just a coin toss.
Exactly. And a 1.0 is a psychic who is never, ever wrong. So an AUROC of 0.80 means Cerebra is highly effective at actually catching the dementia while strictly minimizing those false alarms that terrify patients and waste doctors' time.
Furthermore, it hit a concordance index, or C-index, of 0.812 for survival prediction.
What does that mean in practical terms?
It means the system is highly accurate at predicting the actual timeline of when the disease will progress to the next stage.
Ah, the timeline. It's where it gets really important for you, the listener.
Yes. By analyzing the temporal data, Cerebra actually identified a distinct chronological cascade of evidence. 3 to 4 years out from a clinical diagnosis, the agents were already extracting signals of structural and vascular degradation.
Wait, so 3 to 4 years before overt memory loss kicks in, it's spotting clues.
Yes. It flags things like cortical atrophy and white matter hyperintensities on the imaging. Then, moving into the 1 to 2 year window, systemic vascular pathology starts dominating the health records.
So the breadcrumbs are there.
They are. It is only in the final 0 to 12 month that the overt clinical symptoms, like the narrative notes about confusion and functional decline, finally trigger traditional diagnostic alarms.
So Cerebra was tracking the entire pathogenesis years in advance, which gives the clinical team a massive 3-year runway to intervene.
Exactly. Manage blood pressure, change lifestyle factors, start neuroprotective therapies before the damage is irreversible.
But the ultimate test of any medical tool is what happens when you put it in the hands of human doctors. Did this system actually make them better?
The researchers ran a rigorous clinician reader study to find out. They took 6 experienced doctors and gave them 40 complex cases each. Half were reviewed using just standard clinical data, and the other half were reviewed using Cerebra's interactive dashboard.
The human alone versus the human plus AI team. What happened?
The synergy was undeniable. With Cerebra, the doctor's overall diagnostic accuracy jumped by 17.5 percentage points.
That's a huge leap.
It is. But the critical metric is sensitivity, their ability to correctly catch the disease when it was genuinely there. That metric skyrocketed by 29.8 percentage points.
Almost a 30% improvement in catching patients who would have otherwise just been sent home and told, oh, you're just experiencing normal aging.
Exactly. And it was exceptionally valuable for tricky subtypes like vascular dementia, which often masquerades as other conditions.
Oh, I'm sure.
Without the AI, the doctor's recall for that subtype was only around 25%. With Cerebra synthesizing the data, it leaped to nearly 75%. And crucially, the doctors reported much higher confidence in their decisions because they could audit the AI's logic step by step.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it means the AI acts as this tireless, ultra-meticulous assistant. It elevates the physician's role. They don't have to be data gatherers desperately digging through decades of scanned PDFs anymore.
Exactly. They become strategic decision makers. It fundamentally shifts their cognitive load.
So to quickly summarize our deep dive today, Cerebra represents a major shift in AI. We are moving away from opaque, single-minded oracles.
Right. The black boxes are out.
And we're entering an era of transparent, collaborative teams of specialized agents. They debate evidence, they learn from human feedback, and they significantly boost a doctor's ability to catch dementia years in advance.
It truly sets a new standard for medical machine learning.
And for you, the listener, this is about the future of your own healthcare. It means faster, more accurate triage, less time wasted on unnecessary tests, and a system that actually respects the complexity of human health.
Absolutely. But, as we close out today, I want to leave everyone with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Go for it.
Based on the sheer efficacy of this architecture, if this propose and critique multi-agent debate framework is so effective at decoding the mysteries of the human brain, where else in our lives could we deploy virtual boards of debating experts?
Oh, that's a great point. The architecture is completely agnostic.
Right. Imagine having a personalized multi-agent AI board debating your financial future, cross-examining different data streams of your portfolio and macro market trends.
Or a virtual board simulating a complex legal dispute.
Exactly. Or debating the strategic risks of your next career move. By forcing multiple specialized AI perspectives to clash and critique until a consensus emerges, we might be unlocking a universal mechanism for finding the hidden truth in any complex system.
From the murky depths of cognitive neurology to the major decisions that define our lives, the ultimate breakthrough isn't just processing more data. It's finally building systems that can argue their way to the truth.